All right. Good morning, everybody. It's great to be back with you. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Fakoli. You should listen to him. I'm just learning to understand the words he was using in that song. But Fela sang something much similar. He sang Movement Against Second Slavery. I think you guys should find the time to look for that song. It dovetails into the subjects that I want us to discuss this morning. So let me see some indication. Okay. All right. So I know you guys are there. So a lot of serious things are happening around the world. As unserious as we may prove to be, a lot of very serious things are happening around the world. I would usually leave it to David, the son of Uday, to seek to enlighten, especially when it comes to geopolitics, the place of Nigeria on the menu of the world. Usually, I leave it to David and quite a few spirited others to deal with that subject. But you know, when they say the shit is getting real, shit is really getting real now. And for the first time in a long time, I'm forced to speak to Nigeria within the context of the global community, or shall we say the global village as they are wont to tell us. But because I don't want to get ahead of myself so that I do not cheat others who have been told that we'll start by 10 o'clock, I'll limit myself to touching on the more general subjects of the state of the world as it is today. I am not pro-Iranian. If anything, I'm probably pro-American. All of us have been conditioned from our youth to believe only good comes out of America. I'm even related to an extent. My brother is American by birth. So ordinarily, you think that my sympathies should lie with our country. And yes, it does, but my sympathy is first and foremost to humanity. And as I have watched what's been going on in the last couple of weeks across the Middle East and the world, especially since as much as we want to pretend we are not part of the fabric of the world, we are part and parcel of the fabric of the world, and part of that fabric is us feeling the effect of the shift in world oil price. Once upon a time, it used to be that when there are wars in the Middle East, Nigeria is due a windfall. But this time around, we're not getting a windfall. If anything, we're paying a tax for the stupidity of men that have resulted in the war in the Middle East. We're paying a tax on the stupidity of those who have also purported to rule Nigeria. Because if anything, this is probably the time when Nigeria should be poised to fill the energy gap that has been opened up by this war. But unfortunately, not only have we found ourselves in a situation where Nigeria refines less than it used to, it also produces even less crude than it used to. So we're caught in two vices. We're suffering the effect of the rise in crude because we can't even supply our own local refinery. That's the Dangote 1 hour. We were told once it was done, all of us would be living in El Dorado, but now we know better. Point is this: we cannot continue to imagine that we are somehow separate from the world and immune from what goes on in other parts of the world. I don't want, like I said, I don't want to get ahead of myself, but this issue is actually separate and distinct from the one that I will be speaking to later on. And I just need us all to understand that let us be self seeking, altruistic in defining what our own interests are as a collective. Let's stop this instinctive follow thing. If America has said it, it must be true. If America has done it, it must be right. Nah, nah. There is only one humanity, and it's either right or it is wrong. Whatever gives you the power to execute the ruler of a country and to decree that the person is evil gives every other person, 193 other countries, the same right. So I will leave it to experts like David who have taken the time to and they have the patience to communicate some of these things. But I just know that there is something reflexively wrong with a world where one global power decides what to do at any point without consideration for the consequences on every other person. But that is that as that goes. During the course of the last week, I accompanied Shegun Lawrence of Object TV to a press conference that he gave. I believe that was on Thursday. I think that, yeah, it was on Thursday. He had forwarded a draft of his press release to me that morning. And when I saw what he was dealing with, I couldn't help but make sure that I was present at that press conference. And this is pertinent because it offers what Shegun is dealing with Umahi offers a window. I've always told you this. When you see them do these things, and when I speak to them, I do not speak to them to talk about the persons. I speak to them in order to draw your attention to the fact that this is how Nigeria operates. Shegun is a journalist. He recorded a conversation that he had in the company of two others who went on a there was a protest at the Ministry of Works. You already have those details. Suffice to say that the minister has not complained that Shegun has lied. The minister is not saying that Shegun has blackmailed him with what he has recorded. The minister is not denying the veracity of the recording. He's not saying it's AI, but he's threatening a journalist who has a constitutional duty to keep you and I informed simply because he did his job. We're living in a country that is becoming increasingly dictatorial. And it is critical that we speak to this so that we do not sleep and then find ourselves sleepwalking. We're already in something of a dictatorship. But if we're all obliged to pretend that we are in a democracy, that need to continue to pretend we're in a democracy is only heightened when those who are aware of the fact that we are not in a democracy are quick to rally around those against whom the system will bear its fangs. So let us be clear. When a country that claims that it is a constitutional democracy begins to seek to muscle and then silence those who speak what it does not want to hear. Not that they are lying, but it just simply does not like the truth being told. That is dangerous. You should never allow that to happen, and we must never find peace with such a situation. And it would lead me to round off this section by regurgitating, sorry to use that word, a discussion I did have with Shegun himself after, I think that was on Friday, the day after the press conference. And in the course of our conversation, I said to him, every time that you find yourself attacked simply for telling the truth, celebrate. You've won. Before the first shot is fired, you've won. As long as what you have done is to tell the truth. Those who attack the truth guarantees their defeat. It is not about the person being attacked. It is the message the person has delivered Is that message truthful? Has the person told the truth? You that is fighting against what has been said, are you convinced that you've been lied against, or you are simply reacting based on your ego? How dare somebody say this or say that, simply because you perceive yourself as being all powerful against whom nobody must speak the truth? Whenever this happens, what you find yourself doing inadvertently is that you are on a collision course with God. Because here is the thing: God is the truth. The truth is God. And you know, amazing thing is that there can be no separation between the truth and God. So those who attack the truth attack God, knowingly or unknowingly. And when you do that, the only thing that you guarantee is that you will lose. The truth does not die. I've spoken about this multiple times. It does not die. The truth is immortal. You who is attacking the truth, you are but a mortal man. My attacking the truth is at best, his relevance to Tinubu is transactional. The day he stops being relevant, or Tinubu decides that there is some other person on the queue that is going to prop up ahead of him, that's the end of it. That is simply the end of it. So when mortal men decide to play God because of office, and then they chase after either the truth teller, the truth itself, or the agents of truth, all that happens is that they set themselves up for defeat. Tell Dave, the son of Umai, he will lose, because what he chases is the truth. The truth does not move, it's immobile, immutable, it's constant. The lie chases after the truth constantly until it tires out and he has to come to the point of acknowledgement of the truth. I would advise, Honorable Minister, let the young man be. He's merely done his duties. Another day, another time, another place, perhaps. So this morning, that is that dealt with. Housekeeping done. So we got 2 minutes before we start church. So let me give you guys something to do. If you have time later on, look for Fela's song, Movement Against Second Slavery. That song is particularly important to the subject we're discussing this morning, just the same as Fakoli, who I was listening to before coming on air. The reality is that it is not beyond our intellectual capacities as God's creatures to imagine our way out of the mess in which we are enmeshed, but to begin to believe that everything is hunky-dory, we're all fine and ginger, everything is good, is to be leading yourself to the slaughterhouse. Well, history will say that you were told. Nobody's going to claim they didn't know. You know how it is, we gotta wait for our stragglers, but they are not even stragglers. We're the ones who told them 10 o'clock. So we'll go a minute to 10. Whilst we're waiting, if it wasn't for all this copywriting, I should be sharing my Fakoli track with you. But hey, it is what it is. So we'll go a minute. We'll wait. Oh, by the way, just so that it wouldn't be me being selfish. So yesterday I gave a talk to a faith-based collective, and they wanted to know what's to be done in 2027. And I told them the same thing I'm going to tell you now. If you're waiting for 2027, it may just be too late. Start now. Start yesterday. Good morning, everybody. It's 10 o'clock now. So church is going to, someone is going to commence the church now. So of you who are not with us earlier on, you might want to catch up with my ta that I was busy yarning earlier on. So, but this morning, I would like us to speak to the subject. Nigeria, best dish on the menu. You know, when you enter, I was going to try to eat catch of the day. You know, when you go to some fancy restaurants, especially those that sells seafood, they would have a board out, especially when they have outdoor sitting areas. There used to be one. I used to enjoy going there a lot in Ikoyi. As an outdoor sitting area, and they would have the catch of the day. So I was going to title this morning's lecture, Catch of the Day. But I realized that that would sound a little too elitist because in the first place, how many of us have gone to places where they display those dainty chalkboards that they put part of the menu and then, or they'll say chef's delight. And then they'll tell you what the chef has decided. Like, you know, the chef was feeling good with himself. My decided was lamb chops and some gravy and all of that. So they'll say catch of the day or menu of the day or chef's delight or whatever. But what I have to describe is not such a pleasant culinary experience. What I have to describe is the Nigerian condition, the African condition. It is not a pleasant subject, even though I make light of it. It's not a pleasant subject. It took McCartney, the Canadian Prime Minister, to bring this metaphor to light when he gave his speech at Davos. I don't know whether that's how they pronounce it. That place full of snow where Igbo people sit with Africans and others are spectators and they decide the financial, economic well-being of the world. So it was at Davos, and McCartney had a lot to say, but he left an indelible metaphor as part of his speech. And he was speaking about how if you're not at the table, you are metaphorically on the menu. In case you don't understand that, let me explain myself, or maybe I should say explain it. You know, if decisions are taken that affect your life, and you do not have agency over your life, which means you have no say over the decisions that have been taken over your life, you're on the menu. Those who are taking the decision, they're at the table. So when McCartney was speaking, he was speaking about how he, representing the Canadians, did not want to become part of the menu. He'd always sat at the table as Canada. Nobody was gobbling up Canada at the Berlin Conference. Canada was a veritable member, and remains a veritable member of multiple global institutions where it has seats at the table. But at Davos, contemporary realities forced McCartney to speak about not wanting to be on the menu. And it said something that's been around forever, but had never been used in world diplomacy so openly. Nobody in world diplomacy had come out so bluntly about the real state of the world order. In the real world order, you are either at the table or you're on the menu. Nigeria, I'm sorry to say, for a long time, from the beginning of its creation, has been on the menu. It remains on the menu. There are multiple kitchens and there are multiple dining tables, but Nigeria is on the menu. You know, there is this other metaphor. It speaks of the human race. And when we talk about the human race, the thinking is about one humanity that is racing towards a destination, almost always visionary destination, and they are racing towards it. So there is a human race. Human beings are racing towards something. But the unfortunate reality is that the Nigerian, nay, the African, are still further nowhere near the starting block. We seem to be racing back into our antiquity is better than our reality, so I cannot even speak to us racing back into antiquity, because our best days are in our yesterday, in our yesteryears, whether as a collective, as a race, or as a country. Our best days are behind us. So we are not racing into the future. We're certainly not going back to our glory days. We've derailed completely. So the rest of the human community are racing towards development. America was racing far ahead of everyone. The Chinese appear to have overtaken them. The Arabs, they were raising very nicely until Israel and America began to decimate them. Far East Asia, Vietnam, Cambodia, Korea, both North and South, are far ahead of us in the race. Latin America, far ahead of us in the race. We are the only ones who have refused. If we were not even racing and we had stood still, it would make sense. Unfortunate thing is, we're rooted in derailment. Now, the most painful part of this is the refusal to use our God-given brains. If you retain the use of your brain, it becomes exponentially easier to figure a way out of your mess. But I am sorry to say that if there were to be a spare part, a human body spare part, the Nigerian brain would be a bestseller. It's rarely ever used. We rarely ever use our brains, largely because religion has rendered us superstitious, intellectually indolent, constantly resigning ourselves to leaving everything to God, including what God has enabled us to do. But I have said ceaselessly that I have no desire to speak to lamentations. We must speak to issues, to facts, and then to the solutions. If I say Nigeria is on the menu, every one of us knows this instinctively, but it is necessary to establish the case. In the 1950s and 60s, Nigeria's economic power was largely built on commodities that were sold to the West and to Asia. Cocoa, granite, cotton. But as we were producing these commodities, we had local manufacturing capacities. We were manufacturing tires. We had multiple textile industries which employed vast numbers. We produced our own cotton. We had our gin mills. We had textile mills. This meant that we could export to other African countries. We were saving the monies that used to go, that now goes out to go and bring Ankara from China. Shameless people go to China that does not wear Ankara to bring Ankara to Nigeria. All kind of tariff everywhere means that our own products, if we even if we somehow struggle in spite of the institutional limitations, the power and energy poverty that has been inflicted on Nigerians, it means that even after you've run all these races, you can barely qualify to take anything into any European country or America, except it's just raw material. The barriers are set so high that you can't even qualify when it comes to finished products. The financial systems are deliberately set to be unequal. The inequity of the financial system means that we, Africans, Nigerians, we borrow at exorbitant costs. The bulk of our revenue goes to debt servicing. Can't borrow in your own currency. Whenever America is constrained, what do you think they do? They print the dollars. All that might be ending now in the imagined world order, but up until this moment, America simply prints its own currency, and that is why they have $1 trillion deficit. You know what $1 trillion deficit is? Meanwhile, Nigeria, for every kobo that we must borrow, you go. I'm not speaking to indiscriminate borrowing or the stupid ways and means that Buhari engaged in, that it would appear that Bulaba is also engaging in. But the reality is that the way the financial systems are structured, they're perpetually structured against the Nigerian. America can simply borrow any amount it cares, issuing all kind of junk, what do they call those things? Bonds, largely purchased by the Arabs and the Chinese, with whom things are fracturing now. But who do we go to? We borrow constantly and seek interest. Now, I want you to remember when they had the euro crisis, when almost every country in Europe was collapsing. I think that must have been, I can't remember the exact time now, but what happened was Germany purportedly lent money to Spain. Spain was lending. So in short, the African, we who continually take out unfinished product, who continually pay stupid interest, who continually borrow at double digits. How do you have a country where the rate of borrowing from your central bank is already in double digits? What kind of business are you supposed to do? How do you compete with countries where you have single digit interest, sometimes as low as 3-4% for industries? And yet the IMF will come, they will tell our own ruiners, liberalize this, liberalize that, increase that, make the cost of this, devalue this, constantly making it institutionally impossible for us to come out of the mess. We're never there when decisions are being taken. I'll give you a case in point. About 3-4 days ago, a trade and defense agreement was announced in the UK, in London. Mike Carney and Starmer, the British Prime Minister, they agreed to build a Commonwealth, hear that, Commonwealth Economic and Defense Zone. Now, we are members of this Commonwealth. Nigeria is the most important, at least in Africa. As much as they've devalued us in the international community, the reality is that by reason of population and wealth, Nigeria still carries a voice. But where were we? We were not in the room. We were nowhere to be found in that room. It had taken Canada and the UK to take the lead. Meanwhile, everybody is looking at us because of our population as a destination for their product. What product are we taking to them? What product? They will come to us and tell us, structural adjustment program. Oh, you must increase tariff on that. You must increase the importation cost on this. They've destroyed our local capacity to even do anything for ourselves. And as things are changing on a daily basis, the Nigerian remains on the menu instead of moving to the table. At no point is the interest of the Nigerian considered. I spoke to you earlier on about how if you are not at the table, you're on the menu. And then we were talking about how Nigeria was carved up, Berlin Conference, British sat at the table feasting on Nigeria, but there is something that you are also missing. And what you're missing is this. Just as you have foreign beneficiaries sat at the table feeding on Nigeria, you have the Nigerian managers, and those are your ruiners. They constantly sat at the table eating the crumbs of what the colonial masters for whom they work are feeding, because at the end of the day, what they get are crumbs. And I'll show you. So they steal all these monies and they take these monies abroad. Those abroad are able to borrow in single digits because the banks are holding so much deposit, dead assets. We who are here by design, those who are the police of the world, in whose financial system our ruiners keep their monies, they say nothing. They keep lending. They keep lending knowing that we have enough resources to keep paying. And these bastards who call themselves our ruiners take the money, take it back to the same people who had borrowed, they lent us this money, and then they say they are leaving. A lot of, I will not speak to Jerry Husseini, but you already know the story. It gives you a window into the kind of waste that has happened to us. Now, the word tell us that we're a global village. Global village. And I've said this ad nauseum. We can continue to bellyache about our situation, or we can seek ways to come out of our situation. The only way for this to end, the only way for us to come off the menu and find a seat at the table is when we become. When we become is not some fantasy. When we become is about becoming as citizens. Citizens exercise sovereignty. Citizens who exercise sovereignty in the knowledge of the fact that they are on the menu would work to ensure that those who will be representing them at the table understand the brief. You can only understand the brief when there is a vision that is clearly elucidated and that the person running is running with. This means that after we have fought the battle to become as citizens, because if we don't become citizens in Nigeria, we'll perpetually remain on the menu. The world is not interested in seeing us recover agency of our sovereignty. They are happy with our rulers who summarily abrogate our rights and take away our franchise, install themselves in power, and that is why you find that when they send their election monitors, after they are done speaking Dogon Turenchi, especially when they bring their belly achers who will come and say, oh, the election was less than perfect, which is true. But what then happens? You find their ambassadors queuing behind each other to ensure that that regime is kept in power, because those regimes actually work for them. They don't work for me and you. That is our existential reality. But if they were not working for the powers that be outside of Nigeria for whom they work, they know what to do to take them out. Abacha didn't just expire because of some Chinese and some Indian prostitutes. Some people decided that it was done. It was bad for business. That is what Nigeria is, a business. So after you've become citizens, you weaponize knowledge. Look, it is not a taboo to recognize what is in your own enlightened selfish interest. America said they came to Nigeria to come and help us with insecurity, but have you noticed that there has been a spike, upward spike in terrorist attacks? In the Middle Belt, in the Southwest, and yet they've come to help you preserve your sovereignty, to fight terrorism, which your government enables. And they know this. So you're at the table, on the menu. Our rulers, they get their baubles, where they used to give the old slave traders umbrellas and mirrors. They give these idiots. They give them watches, they give them cars, give them houses. And then what? And then what? They give them all of these, but What they give with one hand, they take with the other, because at the end of the day, if your people are slaves, how are you any different? You trade us to get baubles, nothing, glass beads. When you're done weaponizing knowledge, you have to eradicate poverty, lift the people out of poverty. And that is not an impossible thing. Ours is a blessed land. Poverty means that the person is unable to feed themselves, they are unable to live in decent housing, and they can't clothe themselves. That is the basis of poverty when you reduce it to existential levels. The fact of the matter is that before the white man entered these shores, we didn't have that level of poverty here. If nothing else, an African is able to feed himself. God has blessed us that much. Where I live is reclaimed land, reclaimed from the lagoon bed. Look behind me, lush vegetation, lagoon bed. That is how blessed this land is. But we've been placed in a situation where, as Fela warned, we are entering a second slavery. Look, yesterday's riches are tomorrow's glass beads. The world is moving away from a whole lot of things that used to be valuable to a whole lot of things we never had value for. Let me show you how we've remained on the table. You have a situation today where, in the emerging global challenges, green energy is fueling a scramble for our resources. Lithium, cobalt, californium, etc. Rare earth minerals that are necessary, required in telephony, in fossil-free cars, all kind of electronic uses for these rare earth minerals. This is the new frontier, and we're blessed with it in abundance. But it is also what is feeding the insecurity. It is why you have American boots on the ground. It's why you have Chinese men on the ground. It's why Russians are eyeing us. It's why you have everything in a constant state of flux. But who is watching? Insecurity is overtaking the land. The government is complicit in it. And so is the international community. Be that Britain, America, China, name them, Turkey, they're all involved, because we're seen as expendable and our interest is not protected by those who should be protecting our interests. Nigeria is on the menu and our rulers are slave traders. One of the most dangerous agreements that has been signed by a Nigerian government is rarely even discussed. That is the health treaty that was signed, the health agreement that was signed with the Americans. In the first place, it means that our national security is subordinated to the Americans, because let's face it, the Americans have sovereignty over the data that will be gathered as a result of this. And in the new world order, data is as valuable as oil. And we are handing our national health data to the Americans. All over the world where this has been attempted, citizens they've risen up against the madness. In Nigeria, nary a bleat from anybody of consequence. And yet, our national health data will be handed over to the Americans. These are not benevolent interests. America first, lofty ideal. But how is that compatible with Nigerian sovereignty? Or Nigerian sovereignty is of no consequence or use? America first, and we handed over our health system. Mind you, as a part of that handover, one of the key clauses in that agreement gives the Americans the right to terminate, discontinue, or suspend any program within the health plan. And we handed that over. You have a situation where the same government handed over the tax administration to the French. Another data surrender handed over to the French. So now the French can sit down. They have all, if they have our tax data, it means that they can map our spendings and determine what the trends are. These are sovereign data that should not be shared with any other entity. We've handed it over because we are not sovereign. We're not sovereign as citizens, and that has meant that we're not a sovereign nation either. Our sovereignty has been abrogated by our local slave traders who have now traded us to their foreign partners on multiple levels. It means that the Americans can have digital and biological extractions at any time. The French have a backdoor to almost our entire economic data, and there is sovereignty erosion, and nobody is talking about it. We have secret MOUs. We don't know what kind of agreement has been signed with the French. We're only speculating. Speculation born of educated understanding of exactly how these things work. And you know the most laughable part of the whole thing? There is what the OAU terms Agenda 2063. And this Agenda 2063 is designed to shift Africa from being a plantation. Let me use Peter Obi's word. It's meant to shift Africa from consumption to production. 2063. Think about it. 2063. In 2063, I'll be 95 years old. Let that sink in. In the 80s, as I was in my teenage years growing up, I heard them talking about water for all by the year 2000. Healthcare for all by the year 2000. Education for all by the year 2000. Everything was going to happen for us by the year 2000. She didn't happen by the year 2000. Now they're saying 2063. So in 2063, they want us to move from being pawns to becoming players. They want to shift Africa, Nigeria, and all of us. We will then move from being on the menu to being at the table. Is there anything to suggest any such happenstance? Is there anything? I am going to be 58. Nothing has changed. It's only worsened. Changed for the worse. And we remain on the menu. We are talking 2063. Let me help all of us to understand something. In the emerging world, the presumption of our poverty, our enslavement, is central to Western prosperity. That we will remain on the menu is critical to Western interest. Our presence on the menu is what guarantees the powers of our ruiners. And it brings me back to the same thing that I've been speaking to ad nauseum. We must fight to become citizens. There is a basic difference between citizens' right and human right. Human right is at the base, is misleading. We shouldn't be speaking about human rights in the 22nd century. At this point, we should be talking about citizens' rights, the genre of right that guarantees that you have agency over your life. We don't have agency over our lives. Our ruiners are agents of the West, of anybody who is prepared to pay their bills And that's why we are where we are. Nigeria is the best dish on the menu because we are not even protesting. If lambs would cry, its slaughterers will probably think twice about leading it to slaughter if it will bark the same manner as dogs. But lambs don't cry. The silence of the lamb continually leads to a slaughter. And that is what has led to our enslavement. At some point, we must retake agency over our lives, and it's not going to be a tea party. It will mean that each and every one of us recognizes the need to be human before we can be the bigots that most of us have been. Fight to be human. You will then recognize the humanity of the next person. Without recognizing the humanity of the next person, you continually leave your whole self open to predation. That is why we are where we are. And the things you know that you refuse to teach guarantees the strengthening of your own chains. Please move beyond lamentation. I'm telling you, the only thing we can do is to band together around common cause. I gave you my word. We would have a platform before the end of the month. We can then begin to deal. That does not stop you from doing what you can do in your own space today. Speak to persons around you. And thank you. I just saw a comment come on the screen reminding me that Tinubu will be in the UK in this week. Those of you in the UK, unlike those of us in Nigeria, who are constrained by multiple madnesses, you don't have that insanity to constrain you. If all you can do is just carry a single placard and stand in front of wherever Bulaba is going to be visiting to call attention of his complicit partner in the West to the worsening security situation in Nigeria, to the absence, it's not like they don't know. But let me explain something. We all have to pretend. Just like we pretend that we are in a democracy in Nigeria, the West also have to pretend that they are fostering democracy abroad. So those of you who are abroad, help us. The things we can't do here, help us do it there. Remind Bulaba of the house he has left behind that is burning. Too many people get killed in this country. Too many abuses. Organize yourselves. We will be trying our best here, but you guys are better placed. Do something for us. However minor, however tokenist it might seem, carry your placard, stand there. Let the world know nothing is normal in our country. We've been on the menu for too long. For way too long. But I say this to all of you before I close. If we're coming off the menu, it will be because we collectively resolved that it is time and enough is enough. It is not the obligation of the beneficiaries of our place on the menu to free us. It's up to us to free ourselves, enlighten ourselves, and then free ourselves. There's only so much that one can say, but one needn't say too much for comprehension to take place. I hope you have heard me this morning. I pray you a blessed week ahead. You can be as free as that bed over my shoulder on the wire. Have you a blessed week. Bye-bye. See you next week.